Fun stuff. I've had a week playing around and testing my new 800mm super telephoto hand-holdable 6.3 S lens. Do I like it? No, I love it, and I'll show you why. Well, hey everyone, Hudson here. Welcome to this week's video. I'm super excited. You know, I ordered this lens sort of half anticipating that I was going to review it, say, wow, I don't really need 800mm, and send it on back. But instead, after just 2 walks in a short walks with my kids in a local wildlife refuge, I'm in love with it. And I'll explain why. I'll show you sample images. We'll talk about some of the cool stuff about it. Before I do that, I just want to make sure everybody knows we're having an office hours when we get back from Costa Rica. While you're watching this, I'm going to be shooting with this thing in Costa Rica. And we're going to have an office hours. David Archer and I are both going to be carrying big super telephotos. He's got the new 400 2.8. I'm going to have this 800. We got teleconverters, the 100 to 400. We're going to be shooting a lot of wildlife, and I thought we'd come back with some images and talk about the experience working with long lenses and take some of your questions, whether they're on that topic or anything photographic. So we'll have a big free group get together, office hours, right around summer solstice, June 21st, 10 a.m. Pacific on a Tuesday. Join us live on YouTube or Zoom, or you can watch the replay on Zoom. But you can submit a question, or on YouTube. So you can submit a question or sign up at hudsonhenry.com/office hours. Again, June 21st, 10 a.m. Pacific. All right. So what's so cool about this lens? I guess the first thing is you'll notice, you know, this is my custom 284 CEX Acrotech panorama head, my ultra light tripod setup. This is what I'm planning on taking to Costa Rica along with a monopod, just in case there's some landscapes to capture or macros where I want a tripod. And you'll see, I don't even have this pan tension knob anywhere near tight, and it's holding this guy amazingly. It is not that heavy a lens. This is a 4-pound tripod setup. This is the custom one that I build and sell in my store, and it's more than adequate for this combo. Not only that, but it's nice and light for hand holding. I mean, it's crazy. I have yet to use it with a tripod or monopod. I've been out shooting and gotten some images that I don't think I could get any other way, maybe with my 500 PF on my old D500 APS-C sensor, which, you know, equaled about 750 millimeters of reach, but was only with 20 megapixels. This is with the 46 megapixel Z9 with its 20 frames per second lossless raw capture. Really, really fun stuff. So I'm having a blast with it. The things that I noticed most are just its lightweight and ability to just handhold and carry easily. It comes with this really, really nice custom bag from Nikon. It's made for it and the 400 2.8 that David Archer is bringing along on the Costa Rica trip. It has a nice little monopod mount on the side, a couple of zippered pockets, say for the drop-in filters that this lens takes natively. I've got a circular polarizer coming. I don't know if it'll get here in time for Costa Rica. And then a nice big padded case that zips open horseshoe style. A couple of padded blocks in there to protect, Velcro strap to lock it in tight. It's nice big leatherette hood that fits over its lens cover that fits over the hood. This whole thing fits in here with the Z9, and you can sling it. I like slinging it over my opposite of how I sling the camera. So it would be here on my right shoulder, and then I can sling my camera off the left. Carry, say, a 100 to 400 in this bag to trade out should I need it, and a 1.4 teleconverter that would work on either one, and maybe a fanny pack with a 24 to 120 and a 105 macro just for running around in the jungle in Costa Rica. That's my kind of planned kit for hopping in and going wildlife shooting. So pretty cool. I'm only planning on taking this lightweight tripod because it can handle all of the different lenses I'm taking, and weight's a limit on the small plane going into Crocodile Bay. So nice padded case comes with it. It's got this beautiful hood up front that has kind of a unique switch. You have to flip this little switch, which is activated when you take the hood on or off. It's a hood you're going to want to use while you're working with this lens, just because the glass is really close to the front edge in this. And I think even more than worrying about flare or ghosting, having that hood on there just protects you from accidentally damaging the front of this, you know, expensive investment that you've made. Now, granted, this is a much cheaper 800 6.3 than we've ever seen such a wide aperture 800 go for before. I mean, Canon's new 800mm that's 1/3 of a stop faster costs more than the Z9 plus this lens, which is kind of amazing when you think about it. And the fact that it's just so darn usable. It has a lot of nice buttons. It has programmable buttons all the way around the front where you'd hold it in a balanced way that your thumb can just easily rest on. It has a function button over here, a focus limiter from 10 meters to infinity if you want to limit your focus to not taking in close objects. It's got a function button that I programmed to play. I programmed these buttons out here to recall a memory setting where you can put a focus memory setting in just by holding this button in. Boop, you get a little indicator that it's locked. Pop, you hit one of these buttons out here and boom, you're at that focus setting. So that's nice, say for infinity, shooting birds in flight, or maybe you're on African safari and there's a kill and you want to just have that focus locked in case something happens there while you're shooting other things. You just tap, boom, you're right back at that focus where the action's happening around the kill. So just a really nice combo on the Z9 in particular. And it actually is making me appreciate the vertical grip with this camera, just because it's easier, you know, as you rotate around, not to be up like this with such a heavy lens. Keeping your elbows in and balanced is nice for hand holding a piece of glass like this. And the fact that I can hand hold it is just kind of epic. So let's not waste any more time talking about the physical part of the thing. Let's jump in and look at some images that just in a couple short walks I've captured with this in the first week owning it. All right, so I'm gonna run through about 25 images that I captured. Most of them are from this little wildlife refuge that's about 10 minutes away. I got the lens just under a week ago, and of course you take it out and you go shooting around looking for wildlife. And I just wanna show you what unique images I think this lens enables a person to capture that's a Nikon Z shooter, particularly with the Nikon Z9, because with its 46 megapixel output, that 800mm, you know, on full frame, 46 megapixel, you know, lens combo enables you to get sort of the same reach that those of us who've shot for a long time with the 500 PF on Nikon's D500 could get at only 20 megapixels. But if we jump to crop mode in the Z9, all of a sudden you're getting that same sort of 20 megapixels at 1200, the equivalent of 1200 millimeters of reach by cropping in on that lens's projection. And then the fact that I haven't even played with the 1.4 teleconverter on it, but in Costa Rica maybe I'll have an opportunity. And I'll just show you the images that I captured just in the first couple little outings with this lens make me so excited to take it on trips like Yellowstone, the Tetons, Costa Rica, Africa safaris. It's really something to be able to handhold this kind of reach. So I'm gonna jump in here in Lightroom, you know, and you can see what my settings are. They're almost all gonna be at wide open at f6.3. I was running auto ISO and somewhere between 1250th of a second and 2000th of a second, kind of trying to capture that motion, birds in flight, those kinds of things. I'm thinking wildlife on this trek out through this wildlife refuge. And you know, just jumping out of the car, gearing up to walk into the refuge, Rick's like, whoa, there's the moon. And this is not even in DX mode. This is just FX shooting into the moon. I think I did a little bit of cropping. Let's actually take a look. I'll hit R key here. Yeah, you can see I cropped in a little bit. So it's more like a DX frame of this, but I shot it in FX, and I mean, good grief. That's just some crazy detail to be capturing of the moon handheld. Nutty. You know, here we are out in the refuge. I noticed a red-winged blackbird out in these bushes, and kind of like the fall off that I could see through the lens. I jumped into crop mode, so here I've got a 20 megapixel image captured, you know, at about the equivalent of 1200 millimeters, nice and sharp. You know, I don't know if it's a keeper image, but it's showing the resolving power and how that bokeh is really nice in the background. Little squirrel at quite a distance away from me, over a pond muck. And I show this more to just, you know, say I can fill the frame with something so small. But then as the squirrel comes around the tree, the one challenge that you have with prime lenses and this super telephoto focal length are that if something's coming towards you, all of a sudden it can get impossible to keep the entire beast in the frame. Now I could flip to vertical and probably still have the squirrel in the frame, but any closer and you start cropping the squirrel away. But that reach, you know, this is the same squirrel way up in the top of a tree where I'm standing on the trail underneath. And again, super cluttered image, but the ability to zoom in and see the detail of him eating these little tender spring morsels off the tree and fill the frame that way is nuts. Likewise, little tiny birds that I wouldn't even attempt with the 100 to 400, you know, here in DX mode with the camera, just frame filling, you know, and so sharp, wide open at f6.3 and such nice out of focus detail rendering. You know, here's another one where this little dude was on this stick sticking up out of the muck on the edge of the wetland, you know, which has this just crazy, crazy surface of like algae that's turned into almost moss on the surface of the water. And, you know, what a cool little bird. I couldn't even tell how beautiful he was, you know, visually until zooming in with that, or, you know, looking through that 800 millimeter. Wow. Portraits. You know, I took one look at this shot of my little girl Pepper and all of her amazing, you know, 5-year-old girl jewelry running around in the refuge with us. And just, you know, wow, this reminds me of those beautiful bear images that you see through the big lenses in Alaska. You know, it seems to me like when we go up to Katmai, which I'm looking forward to doing in the not so distant future, to photograph bears, this will be just an amazing lens to have while staying safe and shooting bears. I just love the out of focus rendering, the sharpness of it wide open, and that look, that just gorgeous look. And, you know, portraits, why not? You know, you just have to be a long way away and maybe have radio contact with your subject. In fact, sitting around in my house after we got back from the refuge, I was kind of playing around with that memory recall button on the lens and figuring out how I would best program that into my control settings, and saw Rick sitting clear across the house, 30 feet away from me in the kids' playroom, kind of playing with the kids, having a cup of coffee in the morning. And, you know, he was staying at the house, working on an organizing course with me, and just said, "Hey, Rick," you know, and I love this shot of him, you know, frame filling from 30 feet away, nutty. You know, and then the next day out in my yard, it had just rained, there's a sun break. Oregon is incredibly green this spring because it's been so wet. It's been a little abysmally wet this spring, actually. As you can see from the water droplets on this tulip in our yard, and just, you know, look at that detail. I should have probably rendered 100% previews of this before I started showing them off, but it's just lovely the way it renders details, and then that bokeh is gorgeous out of this lens. So I went back out to the refuge with a new friend that I made during the Palouse workshop. One of our participants, Brad, lives not so far away in the town of Silverton, near Silver Creek Falls. And he tried out one of the custom tripods that I build and sell, and decided he'd come to the studio and pick one up. And we went out shooting as long as he was here. Just real quick, back to Oaks Bottom. And where you park to go into the refuge is right beside one of those few old family-owned amusement parks that are left. And they have a new roller coaster that has a loop. And I remember I'm standing clear outside the park, across the parking lot from the roller coaster, and I just trained the 800 on the loop just a little before the car came into the loop, and thought, you know, I'll give this a shot. And I got a bunch of clear frames, and I'm going to show you. This is totally uncropped. There's the raw file. Just nutty the way that the Z9 and that 800 work together and fill the frame with distant, fun, action type shots. It just enables a kind of photography that you can't do without the super telephoto. We got into the refuge and there was a family of mallards. This is the papa mallard swimming around, and they had these cute little babies that were sunning themselves on a log in that same muck. I got a shot of the bird the other day. And then, as you know, there wasn't a whole lot of action beyond the ducks going on. As we started coming back, I noticed this cute little hummingbird kind of preening and fluffing his feathers in a tree. And then he started flying around and collecting nectar and pollen out of these little flowers along the trail. And even though this is such a busy background, it just shows how sharp this lens is, you know, at f6.3 at its wide open aperture. And I'm shooting, you know, I cranked it down to about 25/100th of a second to try to get the wings more frozen, just for a few shots. And you can see I'm down at 4500 ISO. And I've run this through some pre-raw processing. I've gone through DxO Pure Raw 2.0, which is kind of a new experiment for me, and I love, I love the effect of it. I think it's a little clunky, the workflow through Lightroom, but I'm going to do a video next week on how you can exercise this, you can utilize this amazing noise reduction technology that retains the detail that you want in your image without really giving any artifacts, and still lets you do custom sharpening after the fact in a Lightroom workflow. So look forward to that next week for any of you that have high ISO images. That's the plan for next week's video. But this little Hummer was flying around, and I was able to move and get a little less distracting background. And again, I've run all of these through some noise reduction software, through that DxO Pure Raw, and then processed. I haven't gone through and finish edited, just some basic raw processing and noise reduction. But in the space of about a minute, I shot, I don't know, 300 or 400 images, 20 frames a second of this hummingbird. And I swear, this is about as out of focus as I got. This one's a little soft at the eye. These others are more representative. It was really hard to cull away images from this shoot and get it pared down to the best. And that's a testament to the quality of this lens and the quality of the autofocus and speed of the Z9. It's just an amazing combo having those two working in tandem. And then rolling out of the parking lot, there was this hawk up in a tree, beautiful light on it, and it's so far away. And this is cropped in about APS-C crop, but still just a beautiful bird. And then I noticed that there was a crow dive bombing it as we got further out away, and I just focused in on the hawk and waited for the crow to come in and start dive bombing. And I don't know that this is any kind of stellar image, but what an interesting interaction. And the fact that with the burst mode, 20 frames a second, the autofocusing capability, and the reach of this lens from, over a football field away, just to be able to zoom in and capture an interaction like this, I thought was really fun. So yeah, do I think this lens is really a cool tool for people who like to capture either very small things or things that are far away? Absolutely. Does it take some practice and technique? Yeah, it certainly does. It really, though, if you've been out shooting with a D500 and a 500 PF in your kit, this lens feels a lot like that. That's the effective focal length of about 750 millimeters of reach. This gives you 800 with full frame. And then remember, because you've got that 46 megapixel sensor in the Z9 or the Z7 II, you can punch into DX mode and suddenly be the equivalent of 1200 millimeters. And by all reports, it takes the teleconverter as well. I'll be testing the 1.4 in Costa Rica. So I can't wait to get shooting with this lens in Costa Rica. By the time you watch this, I will be, and I'll report back some of the findings. And remember, next week, I'm going to be talking about how to integrate that crazy sort of pre-raw processing noise reduction into your workflow to squeeze that kind of clean detail out of high ISO images. All right, so there you go. That's my take on the new 800 PFS. If you've got it in your budget and you love to photograph wildlife or distant sports, this lens is going to put a ginormous smile on your face. Again, I got links to this lens, the great rail that Kirk's got for it with a QD for running around with it mounted on your strap, and also for this ultra light tripod setup that I'm using, which is great with it. It's all I'm taking to Costa Rica. I'm excited about being in Costa Rica. So those links are in this video, and you can find all that stuff and everything else that I use at hudsonhenry.com/ATS links. Those links help me out. Thank you. Really quick, I want to make sure everybody remembers we're going to talk about super telephotos. We're going to talk about long lenses as a group. Take your questions post Costa Rica on the 21st of June, Tuesday, 10 a.m. Pacific. Sign up for that at hudsonhenry.com/office hours. If you can't make the live meeting, you can watch it on YouTube later. It'll be archived there. So I hope that everybody's enjoying themselves, enjoying the change of seasons wherever it is that you live, having fun out there. Let me know if you have any questions. You can always get me via email. You can hit me in the comments section on this video or others. And have fun out there. We'll see you next week.